Welcome to Capitol Preview, a weekly bipartisan discussion with Iowa legislators about the key issues facing our state. Brought to you by Mediacom.
Our guest today is Senator Jack Whitver, Republican for District 19. Senator Whitver represents Ankeny, North Des Moines, and Allman. Senator, good morning.
It's good to be back. Thank you.
And thanks for coming in this morning on a cold February morning. We're just going to have a conversation here this morning. What are the Senate Republicans' priorities to accomplish before the legislature ends in this session?
Well, when we took the majority 2 years ago, we came in with we wanted to have a reform-minded agenda. How can we reform state government to make it work better, more efficient in the long term over the 21st century? We also came in with a jobs agenda. We wanted a pro-jobs agenda for the state of Iowa, and over the last 2 years, that's largely worked. We became the #1 state in the country. We are the #1 state in the country for jobs, and we have the lowest unemployment rate in the nation. So those are all great things. The issue we have now is our workforce. We have a situation in Iowa where we have more jobs open than workers to fill them. And so building our workforce by continuing to build on Future Ready Iowa that we passed last year is going to be a key priority for us. How can we get more workers into the workforce? The second thing is really we believe this last election was largely a referendum on our tax cuts in the state of Iowa. And so as Senate Republicans, we're always going to continue to try to reduce taxes in the state of Iowa.
The House and Senate have had subcommittees in legalizing sports gambling in Iowa. Are those bills on track to become a reality for Iowa?
Yeah, that's really an interesting issue because for so long, only a couple states were allowed to have sports wagering, Nevada and then a couple up in Northwest United States. Last year, New Jersey challenged that and said, why can only a couple states do it? The U.S. Supreme Court came back and said, if Nevada's going to be able to do it, every state should be able to do it. And that really started in motion this discussion that almost every state is having right now of whether they should allow sports wagering with their casinos. And so over the last year, a lot of different groups have come together with a lot of different ideas. And at this point, it does appear that both the House and the Senate are moving bills along to address sports wagering here in the state of Iowa. They're both very similar, which means it has a pretty good likelihood of actually passing. But Robbie Smith, our state government chair, has done a really good job working with a lot of interested parties to put a bill out there that I think has a really good chance to pass.
I mean, it kind of happens anyway, right? I mean,
well, I mean, I mean, that's the point. Is you go to an Iowa State or an Iowa game, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people on their phones placing bets with their either personal bookie or with offshore gambling accounts, and really there's no regulation in place. There's no certainty you're going to get paid, and so while we don't want to just legalize everything that everybody is doing, we're looking at this as an opportunity to bring that out of the darkness and put some regulation on it, and then also have the casinos have some oversight on it.
Right, it cleans it up a little bit.
Oh, for sure, and hopefully, if it's done right, you actually can eliminate any chance of corruption rather than have it in the black market where it is now.
Absolutely, it's a good idea. Mental health continues to be at the forefront of many Iowans. Why don't you give us some steps of what you guys are doing to address the mental health issue in Iowa?
Well, mental health is an issue that over the last few years has really become on the forefront of both parties. Republicans and Democrats have both really come together to look at ways we can improve our mental health system. You know, it's one of the things I hear a lot about when I'm out door knocking. Almost everyone you talk to has somebody in their family that has mental health problems, and they want us to continue to work on it. Last year, the governor showed a lot of leadership by bringing all the interested parties together, the advocates on mental health, and said, if you can improve the system, what would you do? Bring us all your ideas. And that work group studied all over the summer. They brought us ideas last year, and the governor really led on getting that passed in a unanimous bipartisan way to implement that complex needs bill for adult mental health. The day that she signed that bill, she also she signed an executive order saying, now that we've passed this for the adult mental health system, what can we do now for the children's mental health system? Because right now in Iowa, there really isn't a children's mental health system. But how can we develop one? As we've seen, especially here in Central Iowa over the last few years, a lot more students are having mental health issues, a lot more suicides happening in our schools, and it's largely we need to build a children's mental health system from scratch in the state of Iowa. And so that work group has met. They've brought us some ideas to look at this year, and so that's where we're starting. It's going to be a lot more difficult to implement the children's mental health system. When you're looking at the adult system, that system's been in place for a long time.
Right.
Everybody knows what needs to happen to fix it, and so we were able to go pass a bill to do that. With the children's mental health system, you're starting from scratch, and so there's a lot of different ideas of who should be in charge, how it should work, and really sorting through those ideas will take a little bit more time. And then the last thing on mental health I would say is we need to find a long-term sustainable funding source for mental health. Right now it's on property tax, and that's a question that we really need to answer on. Is that something we should really have property tax pay for or not? But looking at that long-term sustainable funding is a really important issue.
Senator, taxes seem to be an overriding issue up at the State House. Last year, I know you guys did historic measures to reduce the property tax. What are you guys going to do in the future going forward?
When we took the majority after the 2016 election, one of the key items that the Senate Republicans wanted to work on was income tax relief. We believe that we did have one of the highest income tax rates in the country, and we wanted to reduce that tax burden on Iowans while also help spur the economy. Over 2 years of work, Randy Feenstra, our Ways and Means Chair, put a lot of time into reforming that income tax code. We finally found agreement with the House and the governor at the end of last year to pass that bill. One of the things that bill did is it phased in a lot of the changes over 3 or 4 years. Instead of doing it all in 1 year, we said we'll do a little bit this year, a little bit next year, and so all that's in code. It's all ready to be phased in, but it's going to take some time for that income tax bill to really fully phase in. So with that, we're not looking at doing income tax again this year because we have it phased in over the next couple of years. The thing that we do want to take a look at is property tax. And as I just got through a competitive campaign, as you're door knocking, you hear it all the time. Property taxes are too high. What can we do to reduce property taxes in the state of Iowa? And really my concern is those people that, I hate a lot of them door knocking. The people that have lived in Ankeny for 40, 50, 60 years. They've owned their house, they have owned it outright, they have no mortgage, but they're on fixed incomes, and all of a sudden their house is going up in value, which is great. No one's saying that's not a great thing. Yeah. But when the tax goes up with it to the point where they can't afford that, you're essentially taxing people out of their homes. And so we want to try to find ways to really address that. One of them is looking at the assessments, how the assessments work, and how much of that assessment should the city be able to capture. The second thing, as I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, is I really want to take a look holistically at property taxes and figure out what we actually need to put on property taxes and what shouldn't be put on property taxes. If you look at your property tax bill, there's about 7 or 8 or 9 different things that property tax goes to. It's your city, it's your school, it's your county hospital, it's your public transportation, it's your community college, it's mental health, it's all those things. And so what I'm saying is we need to take a look at that and say, you know what, maybe mental health shouldn't be on property taxes anymore. 20, 30, 40 years ago, maybe that made sense, but maybe it doesn't anymore. We don't have county mental health homes like we used to. Yep. So can we get that off of property taxes, eliminate that levy, and that will reduce property taxes. So again, Randy Feenstra, our Ways and Means Chair, has worked very hard over the last few months to try to figure out how we can continue to hold back or reduce property taxes.
Yep, very good. House Republicans have recently released their budget targets, and it appears that they are in line with the governor's targets. So how are you going to make that work together, her targets versus your targets? Yeah,
well, first of all, we're about 6 weeks ahead of schedule on planning the budget. Normally you have to wait.
That's a nice thing, right?
Normally you have to wait till about March 15th, and the Revenue Estimating Conference comes out with their new estimate. The good news is we've made some tough decisions over the last couple years with our budget. And because we have made those tough decisions, we're in a situation where our budget's strong, we have plenty of revenue coming in, and we don't need to wait until March 15th to start those targets. And so what normally comes out at the end of March, we're starting that conversation the middle of February. The House Republicans released their targets last week, and as you said, they're very close to where the governor is. We're going to release ours hopefully in the next couple of days. We had a good caucus on it to make sure that the caucus on board with that number. We will come in lower than both the House and the governor. Some of that is because of different ways to fund different items. But the Senate Republicans, we want to be very, very careful about how much money we're spending and how much increase we're adding to the state budget. And it was just the last 2 years that we actually had to cut budgets in the middle of the year. We were willing to do so to make our budget strong and to make sure it balanced, but we want to put ourselves in a position where we're not increasing spending to the point where we have to come back in 6 months and cut budgets again. And so we're going to be very diligent, but I think that we're going to be able to come to a good agreement with the House and the governor.
I got to think that helps you in a lot of ways, right? I mean, you don't have the pressure on you to get the budget done. If we're 6 weeks early, that helps you.
Yeah, I mean, normally you're waiting until the last
right.
couple of weeks to make all the budget deals, and this year it's going to be a longer process, a more thoughtful process, but again, we want to be very diligent about how much we're increasing spending here in the state of Iowa.
I know the Republicans have been reform-minded in the last couple of years, and they have mentioned the importance of welfare reform. So do you want to take us through that a little bit?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, one of the things we really wanted to do when we took the majority is take a look at how state government operates and come in and make reforms where necessary. You've seen that over the last couple of years with collective bargaining reform, tort reform, workers' compensation reform, tax reform, regulatory reform, all these things that we've accomplished over the last couple of years. As I mentioned earlier, workforce is a very big issue here in the state of Iowa.
Yeah.
We have about 50,000 jobs open with no workers to fill them. And so when you're trying to build that workforce, really you have two options. We can get people to move into Iowa, or we can get people who are not currently in the workforce and bring them into the workforce. And so we have a lot of welfare programs set up as a safety net for people. We want to look at ways that we can get people off of welfare and into the workforce. And so things like Medicaid. If you're an able-bodied adult with no kids and you're getting free health care through Medicaid, and you're not working, we want to bring you into the workforce. And by bringing you into the workforce, you change your life, you change your kid's life, you change the entire trajectory of your family if we can get you into the workforce and get you stable work. And so we want to take a look at making sure that in those programs you are a resident of Iowa, that if you're able to work, we can get you to work because our economy needs it. And the rest of the taxpayers need you to contribute in as well.
That's a unique problem to have, is having more workers eligible than the jobs. Right?
Yeah, and it's a challenge. A couple of years ago, we used to hear, "Oh, we don't have enough welders. We don't have enough welders." That's all we heard. We didn't have enough welders. Yeah. But now, almost every single group that comes into my office, it's not just welders. It's plumbers, electricians, it's psychiatrists, it's data analytics, it is teachers, it's people in the restaurant industry. It's almost every industry that comes into my office. That is their number one concern is workforce. And so we want to continue to try to bring people into the workforce.
Yeah, and one of my other jobs is that of a mayor, and they build great businesses, but they have trouble with the labor part of it, and that's very frustrating to them.
Yeah, and one thing we want to do in improving our tax climate is encourage more businesses to move to Iowa. Yeah. I think we are in the process of setting up our tax climate to do that. The problem is a big business won't move to Iowa, as you know, as trying to recruit businesses, if they don't have enough workers ready to hire. And so it's a great problem to have. I always tell people, as a politician, it's great to say we have 2.3% unemployment. If you're a business owner, that's really tough because you're really having a hard time growing. And I think our economy in the state of Iowa, well, it is growing, but it also is primed to grow even more if we can solve this workforce issue. But I have businesses all the time that come to me and say, we wanted to grow last year, we just didn't think we had enough workers to make that expansion or to open that other location. And so great problem to have, but it's one that we need to continue to work on. We
just need to figure out how to bring mountains to Iowa, right?
Mountains and beaches, right?
Exactly. Well, Senator, we're out of time, but I appreciate you coming in here this morning.
Thank you.
It was a great conversation. I think you're doing a good job, and keep up the good work. So
thank you very much.
Our guest today was Senator Jack Whitver from District 19, Republican from Ankeny, North Des Moines, and Almond.